So our second speaker in this session is Mr. PBS Jagan Mohan, a renowned historian of the Indian Air Force. He has 3 books on IAF and its conflicts, and he has assisted in other history projects over the years, including some exceptional work at USI. Not surprisingly then, he was awarded a Chief of Air Staff Commendation in 2007. We are happy that he's joining us from the US today, and it's past midnight, Mr. Mohan. If you can hear us now, that you're joining us, thank you, sir, for making this possible, and we are looking forward to listening to you now for the next 15 minutes on the bombing saga in the 1971 war.
Thank you very much. I hope
Can we have Mr. Jagan Mohan now?
Yeah, I am online. I hope you can hear my voice.
We can hear you, sir.
All right, cool. I'm going to start sharing my screen just in a short while. I know it will come up on WebEx. However, I'm not sure how the audience, how it will appear in the auditorium, but I will try my best to go over the story. First, it's an honor for me to be here. I would like to thank the DG CAPS, Himachal Chopra, as well as the other distinguished guests present over there who are willing to listen to my talk about the bomber operations. I know many of the war veterans who are sitting there in the audience personally. I had interviewed them in the past, and with their encouragement, I have I had collected quite an amount of research material over the years. In the next 15 minutes, what I would try to do is I will try to cover the bombing effort that the Indian Air Force has undertaken in the 71 war. I'll try to spend the first few slides in trying to tell you more about the weapon system, because even though the veterans may be pretty much be aware of what a Canberra is, what an AN-12 is, the new generation of officers, the new generation of civilians may not have an idea as to what these weapon systems are. The actual bomber force in the Indian Air Force sort of evolved out of the Second World War. The very first dedicated bomber aircraft that we used to operate in the AF was the Multi-Vengeance type bomber, which equipped 2 squadrons, number 7 and 8, during the Second World War. That aircraft was phased out, and it was assumed that the de Havilland Mosquito twin-engined bomber will take its place. That never came in. That never was inducted. Though after independence, due to an joint effort between the Air Vice Marshal Harjinder Singh as well as HAL, the Indian Air Force resurrected around 42 World War II era B-24 Liberator bombers, and these were the first heavy bomber aircraft that the IAF operated, and this aircraft equipped numbers 5, 6, and 16 squadrons. So essentially, after the B-24 was used for about 10 years, the Indian Air Force inducted its first real modern bomber. It was called the English Electric Canberra, which you see on the picture on the right. Prior to the 71 war, it was employed in Congo as well as the 1965 war with Pakistan. Honorable mention should be given to other aircraft that operated as makeshift bombers. We had the Westland Lysander in the Second World War. We used the Douglas Dakota as bombers in 1947, and as I will speak about, we also used the AN-12 and Caribou bombers in 1971. So a little bit more about the Canberra. The aircraft was first flown in 1949, just 4 years after the end of the Second World War. The IAF was the largest export customer. We operated over 100 examples of that aircraft. It's interesting to know that only 10 years separated the B-24 Liberator from the English Electric Canberra. When the aircraft was inducted, it was operated by number 5 Squadron, 16 and 35 in a bomber role. We also had a photo recce variant and a number of trainers that were operated by the jet bomber conversion unit. It was always used in a high, low, high profile, meaning the aircraft would take off from an airbase, then ingress into enemy territory at a low altitude, then right before reaching the target, pop up to about 7,000 feet, do a standard bombing run, rocket bombs, then again hit the deck and make it back to Indian territory. Now, one question folks would ask is, how does this aircraft did it have a place in the modern war that was the 1917 war? An off-looked capability that this aircraft provided was uh, the ability to carry a large amount of ordnance. Like each aircraft could carry up to 8,000 pounds in explosive bombs, and it could haul it almost 500 to 600 miles away. The IAF also had what we call the 4,000 pounder blockbuster bombs. The Canberra was the only aircraft capable of carrying that type of a bomb and deliver it over into enemy territory. To give you an example, it was very common for Canberra squadrons to mount 8 aircraft, an 8 aircraft mission, and in that 8 aircraft mission, that force could deliver about 64,000 pounds worth of bombs. To do the same thing in a Su-7 squadron would require 32 aircraft, almost 3 squadrons worth, and none of them could actually hit the targets at a range of 600 miles. So the Canberra had a very special and a niche role within the Air Force. Our offensive force was mostly of 2 types of Canberras. In fact, the top version that you see is what we call the interdictor version, bomber interdictor 58 version. You can identify it by a fighter style canopy on the top, which is offset to a little bit left. The pilot had an ejection seat, but the navigator, who would sit in the front portion of the cockpit, would also act as the bomb bomber, and he wouldn't have he didn't have an ejection seat. In case of trouble, he would have to pop the hatch here and bail out the conventional way. The second version of the Canberra that we operated in 71 was called the Bomber 66 variant. This can be differentiated by the blister canopy, and it could also carry up to 2 navigators. So sometimes some crew members had, some examples had a crew of 3, 1 pilot, 2 navigators. All of them had ejection seats. The first type was operated by 16 and 35 squadrons. The Bomber variant was mostly operated by number 5 squadron. What in the next slide, essentially all the Bomber Force assets were controlled by Central Air Command. What we have had was we had 3 regular squadrons. On the first one would be number 5 squadron, Tuskers, based in Agra, commanded by Wing Commander Talwar. 16 squadron, Cobras at Gorakhpur, commanded by the legendary Bob Gautam, MVC VM. 35 squadrons in Lohegaon by Wing Commander Badwar. We had an AN-12 squadron, which was a transport aircraft, which I'll come to later, commanded by Wing Commander Vasist, based in, it was stationed in Bareilly. And we also had a flight of Canberras operated by the Jet Bomber Conversion Unit. Squadron leader Sharad Thakkar was the CO for the JBCU. All these assets were, as I mentioned, were under the control of Central Air Command, and Central Air Command was pretty, from what I have heard, is that they were very dominant in insisting that they attack enemy targets first. So whenever you look at the history of the Western operations or the operations in the Eastern Front, you'll always notice that the Canberras were the first to strike. Whether they are the right weapon to strike is up for debate, but they were always the first force to send offensive operations. CSE was obviously the AOCNC at that time was Air Vice Marshal Maurice Barker, and his SASO was Air Commodore Pawar. The Canberras were all stationed in Agra, Pune, Gorakhpur, and the end was in Bareilly. The station commanders are Air Commodore Zahir for Agra, Air Commodore Dilbagh Singh, later CAS for Pune, Group Captain Jain for Gorakhpur, and Group Captain Raghavendran for Bareilly. Now I'll take some time to go over some prominent missions that the Bomber Force undertook during the war. The very first set of notable missions were the strikes against the Pakistani airfields in the western sector. As I mentioned, the Canberra force was the first force to respond back to the PF attacks right on the night of 3rd December, as soon as the PAF completed their preemptive attacks, the Canberra force responded in kind. An interesting fact was uh, the Pakistani Canberras from Shorecourt attacked Agra, and on their way back, they were followed by the IAF Canberras, and they attacked as soon as the Pakistani force landed back at their home base. Um, Primary airfields at Shorecourt, Mianwali, and Masroor were also bombed by the Canberra force, and this pressure was kept over the subsequent nights. Uh, it also brought in results. The Shorecourt airfield the runway was damaged. It was unoperational for a couple of days at least. The runway at Sargodha was also hit. It was out of action for many hours. Over the course of the next week, almost 100 sorties were launched by the Canberras against the PAF air bases. Uh, and at that time of the war, it was the full moon was in effect in the first week, but as the dark phase of the moon started, the counter air sorties against the PAF air bases had to be dialed down. Again, most of the attacks in the north were carried out by 5 squadron, one flight of 16 squadron, and one flight of 35 squadron. All the flights in the Masroor Karachi area were undertaken by 35 squadron, flying from Pune, staging through Jamnagar. One mission that I would like to specifically call out is what is known in the bomber force as the Y-bomb attack on Mianwali. The Y-bomb goes by different names. It was sometimes called the glue bomb. Some people call it the Heraldite bomb. It was actually the brainchild of Air Marshal Y.V. Malse, who was the AOM at that time. The concept was very simple. The bomb consisted of small steel spike tripods surrounded by glue, and a bomber was supposed to drop it on the enemy runway, and these steel spikes would stick to the runway and make it hard to be removed, and it would make the runway unusable. Now the Canberras, as we mentioned before, would usually will fly a high-low, high profile, but this particular bomb required a low-level pass over the runway, along the runway, so that the spikes could be distributed along the length of the runway. There was only one successful attack made. It was done by Wing Commander Gautam and his navigator, Squadron Leader Datta, KK Datta. It was successful in terms of how the bomb found the target. It wasn't so successful in terms of the intended effect. But in the end, the runway was unserviceable for hours. In fact, one of the Pakistani aircrafts also had its tire punctured and it was out of action for a while. It's interesting to know the planning that went behind the raid. What you see is a Google map shot of the Mianwali airfield is shown on the lower left. You see the runway alignment being 24 and runway 06. The challenge was for the navigator was to come up with a new way to find out how can I take my pilot at a low level, come correctly aligned to the runway. So Group Captain Datta, the navigator, the squadron nav leader at that time, studied the maps, identified the Namal Lake to the northwest. On that particular night, using the full moon, they were able to spot the lake. As soon as they cleared the mountains, they hit the deck level, flew a heading of 240. That brought the aircraft right across the runway alignment. And Wing Commander Gautam was able to deliver the bomb. But as I mentioned, the Pakistanis managed to clear the spikes before the glue could set in, but it did cause some disruption to the Mianwali airfield. So that was one of a legendary strike, not too many people know about it. Then there were the strikes carried out by 35 Squadron from the south, typically carried out against the Masroor Air Base. Masroor was attacked on multiple nights. 5th December, the night of 5th December was a very successful night where a Pakistani Canberra was destroyed on the ground, a trainer aircraft was damaged, the runways and taxiways were hit. So the bomber force in Pakistan were kept quite grounded within their area. They were not able to carry out operations. Subsequently, within the Karachi harbour area, there were attacks done on the Kiamari oil tanks at Rig Road. This coincided with the Navy's missile boat attack. Again, a very successful attack in the sense that the oil fires burned for days. One unknown fact is the raid The force led by Wing Commander Badwar took off from Lohegaon. Without staging through Jamnagar, they directly flew to Karachi and came back. One of the longest journeys that IAF aircraft undertook on a bombing sortie, nearly 1200 miles round trip. East Pakistan too saw its share of bombing missions. We had 16 squadron fly quite a few sorties attacking Kurmitola, Tezgan complex. They attacked boats in riverways using the interdictor version, and offensive air support in support of the army for Jessore, Khulna and Dhaka. Total of 53 sorties. This was one of the few areas where they used the 4,000 pounder blockbuster bombs. They were lucky that in that high-low-high bombing, one of the blockbusters directly hit the PAF officers' mess in Dhaka and inflicted a lot of casualties. An honorable mention should be made about the Caribou Transport Force that was stationed in Guwahati, number 33 Squadron. They were used at a very short notice as nuisance bombers. Essentially, since we had air superiority over East Pakistan, about 15 sorties were flown over the Tezgan area where the Caribous were randomly dropping bombs over the airfield. This kept up the Pakistani ground forces as well as the runway repair forces up all night trying to address this. Now I'll pivot to a couple of slides about the AN-12 bomber force. Not many folks know, but the 71 war saw the debut of the AN-12 transport aircraft being used as a heavy bomber. So the transport aircraft was the equivalent of the C-130 Hercules today. It was inducted in 1961. We had 2 units. The trials were first conducted during the 65 war, even though it wasn't used in anger. But the operational debut was done in 1971. All the AN-12s were moved to Bareilly. That's where the ordnance supply was sent. The aircraft were sent on several missions over the next few days. They could carry up to initial sorties carried out around 24 bombs. Subsequently, they were carrying up to 36 bombs in the cargo bay. The AN-12s were not a bomber by design, so the dropping of bombs was basically a judgment by the pilot by looking out the window and figuring out what the timing was. Notably, they flew nearly 40 missions. That map shows, the blue marker shows the various targets the AN-12s were able to reach. On the lower left of the slide, you see one of the AN-12s with the hastily applied camouflage for the 71 conflict. Targets attacked include the Changamanga forest, the Hajipur pass bowls. There were a lot of attacks done on the railway interdiction junctions, Sui gas plant, Fort Abbas, and the last day there was a daylight attack done by a single AN-12 led a force of 3 Canberras attacked Skardu airfield. The photograph here shows the bombs exploding on the Skardu runway, and there were questions asked why was
Mr. Mohan, sorry to interrupt. Can I request you to wind up in 2 minutes, please?
I think I'll be able to do that. So the AN-12 operations, as I mentioned, brought in a lot of kudos and awards to the crew. The award of Mahavir Chakras and Veer Chakras to pilots and navigators apart, there were 5 Vayusena medals. For the first time, there were awards made to flight engineers, signalers, and air gunners for undertaking offensive operations in enemy territory. This was also one of the only occasions where the tail gunners of the AN-12s were able to fire their guns in anger, attacking targets during the bombing raids. There are other links. As I said, 3 slides is not enough to talk about the AN-12s. I've put in a couple of links and books that folks can refer to about this particular saga. I'm almost down to my last 2 slides. I've spoken about the AN-12s. The effort of the bombing, the Canberra bomber, the war effort, you will say is 3 squadrons and about a flight. We only had about 38 aircraft available on an average in the Canberra bombing force. They carried about 250 sorties, pretty small number when you consider that IAF flew almost 6,000 sorties in total. But these are the sorties that actually kept the PAF awake, the Pakistani Air Force awake at night. The losses were high. 5 aircraft were lost. Imagine 38 aircraft being available on average, but 5 being lost. That's a significant amount of attrition. The Canberra pilots got pilots and navigators got 2 MVCs and 11 VRCs for bombers, 1 Mahavir Chakra and 4 Veer Chakras for the Fort Rekhi squadron. We did pay a high price. 11 pilots and 6 navigators paid the ultimate sacrifice. Considering that the casualties of the IAF were 55 aircrew lost, the Canberra losses amounted to almost 20%, which is quite a high price. To sum it up, the bomber contribution to the outcome of the war was that the Canberra and the AN-12s and the Caribous flew nearly 300 sorties throughout the conflict. As I mentioned, the results may not be very explicit, but the Canberras and the AN-12s were the only ones that were carrying the war into Pakistan at night. They kept the PAF alert and awake at night, so that we didn't give them any respite. A lot of their night fighters were tied up in defense, the Mirage 3s and the Starfighters. Additionally, there was also a lot of interdiction and close air support carried out for the army. Railway targets were attacked that disrupted the transport and supply lines. But one thing that is not usually measured is the effect on the morale on the Pakistani public. Especially in the case of the Karachi attacks, it is not easy for citizens of any city to be waken up every night by air raid sirens or seeing a fire burning for days. And that is what happened in Karachi when the oil tanks were blown up. In fact, I quote a Pakistani officer at that time who said, most of our families were at Moripur. They received a hard pounding from the Indian Air Force and suffered quite a bit of damage. The huge oil storage fire was quite demoralizing to the families at Moripur. They kept calling up my telephone line at Mianwali, expecting that Mianwali was also suffering the same fate, and they were worried about their family members. I got fed up fielding all the phone calls. That itself talks about the amount of demoralization that was going on within the Pakistani public. That about sums up what the bomber force contributed to the 71 war. I will conclude my presentation. Take Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mohan. Really appreciate your staying up early into the morning to make this presentation for us. And being a student of history, one can well understand how much you wanted to share. Thank you for that.